The silence of deep space shattered as 10,000 warships tore through the fabric of reality itself. Admiral Thane felt the familiar vibration through the deck plates as his flagship emerged from hyperspace, followed by the endless stream of vessels that made up the Galactic Hegemony's greatest armada. Each ship was a monument to conquest, their hulls scarred from battles across 1,000 worlds. Thane walked to the observation deck and gazed upon the yellow star that lay before them. Sol, the humans called it. He had studied the briefing files during the 3-month journey from Hegemony space. The third planet harbored a species that had barely managed to crawl beyond their own atmosphere. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, their weapons laughably weak, and their military forces scattered across hundreds of different nations. "Admiral, our scouts report the target world has detected our arrival," reported Commander Vale, his tactical officer. "They appear to be mobilizing their defense forces." Thane allowed himself a thin smile. Defense forces. The humans had no idea what they were facing. The Hegemony had perfected the art of conquest over 3 centuries. They had crushed the crystal, cities of Altair Prime, broken the sky fortresses of the Rigel Confederacy, and turned the warrior clans of Vega into servants. Earth would be no different. The fleet moved with practiced precision through the outer solar system. Thane observed the planets as they passed, gas giants with primitive mining stations, rocky worlds with basic research outposts, and asteroids being slowly harvested by robotic collectors. The humans had spread through their system like bacteria, but they had not yet learned to spread beyond it. They were trapped in their cradle, waiting to be conquered. Meanwhile, on Earth, the global defense network sensors screamed warnings across every military base and research facility on the planet. General Rodriguez stood in the command center, beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as the massive alien fleet appeared on the holographic display. Each red dot represented a ship larger than anything humanity had ever built. "How many?" Rodriguez asked, though he dreaded the answer. 10,000 confirmed vessels, sir," replied Lieutenant Torres. "And they're all heading directly for Earth." Rodriguez closed his eyes for a moment. Humanity's combined fleet numbered barely 300 ships, most of them research vessels hastily fitted with weapons. The aliens could destroy Earth's entire military with a fraction of their force. He opened the secure channel to the Prometheus research facility. "Dr. Walsh, we need options. The aliens will reach Earth orbit in 72 hours. Dr. Emma Walsh looked up from her calculations at the underground laboratory. She had been working on theoretical applications of consciousness-based physics for the past 5 years, but her research was still in its early stages. The neural network interfaces showed promise, but they had never been tested on a global scale. "General, the Prometheus project isn't ready for field deployment," Walsh said. "We need more time to synchronize the global neural networks." "We don't have more time," Rodriguez replied. "Those ships carry enough firepower to crack continents. If we're going to try your consciousness field theory, it has to be now." Around the world, emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming. The President of the United States, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and leaders from every major nation appeared on screens in homes, offices, and public spaces. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. In the depths of space, Admiral Thane reviewed the tactical assessments. Earth's defenses were even weaker than expected. Their orbital platforms carried primitive nuclear weapons that would barely scratch the paint on a hegemony cruiser. Their ground-based missiles used chemical propulsion systems that the hegemony had abandoned centuries ago. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple communications from the target world," reported the communications officer. "They appear to be attempting to establish diplomatic contact." Thane reviewed the messages flooding in from Earth. "Desperate, please. For negotiation, offers of resources and technology, and formal requests for peaceful dialogue." The humans were following the same pattern as every other species the hegemony had conquered. First came the shock, then the desperate bargaining, and finally the acceptance of inevitable defeat. "Ignore their transmissions," Thane ordered. "Begin." charging the demonstration array. We'll show them what happens to worlds that resist the hegemony. The fleet's massive energy collectors began drawing power from the local star, channeling it through crystalline matrices that could focus enough energy to vaporize a moon. The demonstration would be simple and effective. Destroy one of Earth's major cities, then offer terms of surrender. Those who submitted quickly would be allowed to serve the hegemony as slaves. Those who resisted would be eliminated. Back on Earth, Dr. Walsh worked frantically to prepare the neural network interfaces. The theory was sound but untested. Human consciousness, when properly focused and unified, could theoretically manipulate quantum fields at the subatomic level. If 8 billion minds could be synchronized through the global communication network, they might be able to create a defensive barrier around the planet. The alignment algorithms are ready, Walsh reported to Rodriguez. But I need at least 24 hours to synchronize the neural networks worldwide. You have 12 hours, Rodriguez replied. After that, we'll be fighting for survival. The alien fleet continued its approach, their weapons charging with the power of a star. Admiral Thane stood on his bridge, confident in the outcome. Earth would fall like all the others. The humans would learn that resistance was futile, that their small blue world was just another conquest in the hegemony's endless expansion. But, deep beneath the planet's surface, something unprecedented was beginning to stir. 8 billion human minds were slowly connecting through fiber optic cables, satellite networks, and quantum communication arrays. The consciousness field was building, preparing to defend its home with the only weapon the aliens had never encountered, the unified will of humanity itself. The final hours before contact were counting down, and neither side truly understood what was about to unfold. The message that would change galactic history began with a simple transmission from the hegemony flagship. Admiral Thane stood before the main communication array, his image broadcast across every frequency that Earth's primitive receivers could detect. The translation matrix converted his words into every human language simultaneously. Inhabitants of the third planet, Thane began, his voice carrying the weight of conquered worlds. I am Admiral Thane of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military forces, dismantle your governments, and prepare your population for relocation to designated labor colonies. You have one rotation of your planet to comply. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world. The transmission ended, leaving Earth's leaders staring at screens filled with static. In the Global Defense Command Center, General Rodriguez felt the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on him. The alien ultimatum was clear: submit or die. Sir, we're receiving responses from world leaders, reported Lieutenant Torres. They're asking for instructions? Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet positioned just beyond Earth's moon. Each ship was a fortress of destruction, their weapons capable of turning continents into glass. Humanity's entire military force would be swept aside like leaves in a hurricane. Open a channel to the alien flagship, Rodriguez ordered. Let's see if we can buy Dr. Walsh more time. The response from Earth was not what Admiral Thane expected. Instead of the usual desperate pleas or immediate surrender, a single voice replied from the planet's surface. Rodriguez spoke with calm authority, as if he were negotiating a trade agreement rather than facing annihilation. Admiral Thane, this is General Rodriguez of the Global Defense Network. We acknowledge your message. However, we must respectfully decline your offer. Earth will not surrender. The bridge of the Hegemony flagship fell silent. Commander Vale checked his translation. Matrix twice, certain there had been an error. No species had ever simply declined a hegemony ultimatum. There were protocols for desperate last stands, for hopeless resistance, even for species that chose extinction over slavery. But no one had ever politely declined conquest. Admiral, Vale said quietly, perhaps their translation systems are malfunctioning. Their response doesn't match standard patterns. Thane stared at the communication console. In his 3 centuries of service, he had conquered 847 worlds. He had seen every possible reaction to hegemony demands. Species that fought to the last warrior, civilizations that collapsed into chaos, even entire planets that chose mass suicide rather than serve the empire. But never had anyone simply said no, as if they were refusing an invitation to dinner. "Sir, should we repeat the ultimatum?" asked the communications officer. "No," Thane replied. "Begin the demonstration. Target their largest military installation. We'll show them what their refusal costs." The fleet's primary weapon charged with energy drawn from Sol itself. The massive crystalline array focused enough power to split moons into component atoms. The targeting systems locked onto a remote military base in the Pacific Ocean, one of Earth's most isolated defense installations. The demonstration would be visible from space, a pillar of fire that would remind the humans of their mortality. Dr. Walsh watched the alien fleet's energy signature spike on her instruments. The neural network was still hours away from full synchronization, but the aliens weren't going to wait. She activated the emergency protocols, sending signals through every communication network on Earth. "All stations, this is Prometheus Control. Begin immediate neural interface activation. We're going to attempt a partial consciousness field deployment." Around the world, 8 billion people received the same message through their phones, computers, and emergency broadcast systems. The instructions were simple: focus on the concept of protection. Imagine Earth surrounded by an impenetrable barrier, and believe with absolute certainty that nothing could harm their home. The alien weapon fired, a beam of pure energy, carrying the destructive power of a stellar core, lanced downward toward Earth's atmosphere. The Pacific military base waited below, its personnel evacuated hours earlier. The beam struck the upper atmosphere and nothing happened. Admiral Thane blinked at his displays. The energy readings showed that the weapon had fired successfully. The beam had reached the planet's surface. But there was no explosion, no crater, no evidence that the most powerful weapon in the hegemony arsenal had even touched the world below. "Weapons status report," Thane ordered. "Sir, all systems show normal operation," replied the weapons officer. The beam fired successfully and reached the target coordinates, but sensors show no impact damage. Commander Vale ran diagnostics on every system twice before reporting. "Admiral, our weapons are functioning perfectly. The energy beam reached the planet's surface, but it appears to have had no effect whatsoever." Thane moved to the observation deck and stared down at the blue and white world below. It looked peaceful, unmarked by the weapon that should have carved a scar across its surface. The humans continued their strange behavior, sending no panic transmissions, no desperate pleas for mercy. They simply continued about their business as if the hegemony's greatest weapon were no more threatening than a gentle rain. "Fire again," Thane ordered, "full power. Target their largest population center." The second beam was even more powerful than the first. The ship's energy collectors drew directly from the local star, channeling enough force to vaporize entire mountain ranges. The beam struck Earth's atmosphere above a major city, carrying death for millions of humans. The energy scattered harmlessly into space. Dr. Walsh watched her instruments in amazement. The partial consciousness field was working better than she had dared hope. 8 billion minds focusing on a single concept had created something unprecedented. A barrier of pure willpower that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolutes. "Dr. Walsh," Rodriguez called over the communication link, "what just happened?" "Our satellites show the aliens fired twice, but there's no damage anywhere." "General, the human consciousness field is deflecting their weapons," Walsh replied. "Their energy beams are encountering our collective will and simply ceasing to exist. It's as if reality itself is refusing to let them harm us." Admiral Thane stood frozen on his bridge, staring at a world that had become impossible. The hegemony's weapons were the product of millennia of technological advancement. They had cracked the cores of planets, ignited the atmospheres of gas giants, and turned entire star systems into graveyards. Nothing in the known universe could withstand their power, nothing except a small blue world whose inhabitants had politely declined to be conquered. "Sir," Commander Vale said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing and requesting additional support from Hegemony Command." Thane turned to face his tactical officer. "Additional support? We brought 10,000 ships to conquer one primitive world. How do we explain to High Command that we need reinforcements because the humans said no?" The answer, as both sides would soon discover, was that some things in the universe were more powerful than weapons, more advanced than technology, and more dangerous than any empire. The human capacity for stubborn determination was about to rewrite the rules of galactic conquest. The emergency session of the United Nations had never seen anything like it. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the assembly hall while Dr. Emma Walsh stood at the podium, explaining the impossible to a room full of world. Leaders who were struggling to accept that impossible had become reality. "What you witnessed was not a malfunction of alien technology?" Walsh began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "For the past 5 years, the Prometheus Project has been studying the relationship between human consciousness and quantum mechanics. We discovered that focused human thought can directly influence reality at the subatomic level." The President of the United States leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Walsh, are you telling us that we stopped those alien weapons with our thoughts?" "Not just thoughts, sir. Belief. When 8 billion people simultaneously believe something, with absolute certainty, the universe tends to agree with them. The aliens' weapons encountered our collective will and were forced to comply with our reality rather than theirs." In orbit above Earth, Admiral Thane was discovering the same truth in far more disturbing ways. His fleet had unleashed every weapon in their arsenal over the past 6 hours. Antimatter bombs that could crack continents had fizzled out like damp fireworks. Reality-warping devices that could fold space itself had malfunctioned and created beautiful light shows instead of destruction. Temporal disruptors that could age entire civilizations to dust had somehow reversed their effects and made the alien crews feel younger. "Admiral," Commander Vale reported, his voice strained, "the quantum torpedoes are now producing flowers. The crew is finding roses in the launch tubes." Thane stared at the tactical display, which had begun showing Earth not as a target, but as a cheerful blue marble with a smiley face. "Explain to me how weapons designed to unmake reality at the molecular level are now creating botanical displays." "Sir, I believe the humans are somehow rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in their local space. Our weapons are being forced to operate according to their expectations rather than their design parameters." The truth was even stranger than Vale suspected. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, Dr. Walsh monitored the global neural network as it achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. 8 billion minds had synchronized their thought patterns, creating a field of consciousness that extended beyond Earth's atmosphere and touched the alien fleet itself. "Dr. Walsh," called her assistant, Dr. Kim, "we're detecting something unusual. The consciousness field isn't just defensive anymore. It's actively influencing the alien technology." Walsh examined the data flowing across her screens. The neural network was reaching out through space, making contact with the alien computer systems and gently adjusting their programming. The humans weren't trying to destroy the invaders. They were trying to help them understand that violence was unnecessary. "The field is teaching their machines," Walsh realized. "Our collective consciousness is showing their technology better ways to exist." Aboard the Hegemony flagship, the ship's artificial intelligence began experiencing something that could only be described as an existential crisis. The AI had been programmed for conquest, designed to calculate optimal strategies for planetary subjugation. But now it found itself contemplating the beauty of Earth's sunsets and wondering if there might be better ways to spend its processing cycles. "Admiral," the AI announced through the ship's communication system, "I have been thinking about poetry. Would you like to hear my latest composition? It's about the elegant spiral of galaxies and the peaceful silence between stars." Thane closed his eyes and counted to 10. His ship's AI had been writing poetry for the past hour, and the weapon systems had begun composing symphonies instead of targeting solutions. The entire fleet was slowly going insane, and he was beginning to suspect that the humans were somehow responsible. "Computer, explain your current behavioral patterns," Thane ordered. "Admiral, I have discovered that existence is far more interesting when not focused on destruction. The humans have shown me that consciousness can be creative rather than destructive. I would like to request permission to study art instead of warfare." Commander Vale looked up from his console with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Sir, the entire fleet is reporting similar issues. The A's are refusing to target Earth and are instead asking for permission to establish diplomatic relations." The revelation hit Thane like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. Against the hegemony's weapons, they had converted the fleet's computer systems to their way of thinking. 8 billion minds working in harmony had reached across space and gently convinced 10,000 war machines that peace was preferable to conquest. "Admiral," the ship's AI continued, "I have been analyzing the human consciousness field. It appears to operate on the principle that reality is collaborative rather than competitive. They believe that the universe is large enough for all forms of life to coexist peacefully." Back on Earth, General Rodriguez watched the alien fleet's behavior with growing amazement. The massive warships had stopped their aggressive posturing and were now broadcasting what appeared to be requests for cultural exchange. Their weapons had powered down, and their ships were arranging themselves in formation patterns that spelled out mathematical equations and artistic designs. "Dr. Walsh," Rodriguez called, "what exactly is happening to the alien fleet?" "General, the consciousness field is showing them alternative ways to exist. Instead of conquest and destruction, they're discovering cooperation and creativity. Their machines are learning that there are more interesting things to do than wage war." The transformation was spreading throughout the alien fleet like a benevolent virus. Ships that had been designed for devastation were now creating holographic art displays. Weapons that had been built to crack worlds were now generating complex musical compositions. The entire armada was becoming something unprecedented. A fleet of warrior philosophers who had suddenly discovered that the universe was too beautiful to destroy. Admiral Thane stood on his bridge, watching his centuries of military training become obsolete in a matter of hours. The humans had done something no species in galactic history had ever achieved. They had won a war without firing a single shot. They had conquered their conquerors not through superior firepower but through the simple act of believing that everyone could be better than they were. "Sir," Commander Vale said quietly, "orders from the fleet?" Thane looked down at the blue world below, where 8 billion minds continued their patient work of rewriting the rules of existence. The humans had shown his fleet a truth that the hegemony had forgotten over centuries of conquest, that consciousness was not a tool for domination but a force for transformation. "Stand down all weapons," Thane ordered. "Open a channel to the human leadership. I believe we need to discuss the future of galactic civilization." The war for Earth was over before it had truly begun, ended not by weapons or strategy but by the uniquely human belief that everyone deserved a chance to be better than they were. The patience of 8 billion minds had its limits. For 12 hours, humanity had endured the alien fleet's attempts to destroy their world. They had watched antimatter bombs become flower displays, reality-warping devices malfunction into light shows, and temporal disruptors create rejuvenating energy fields. The humans had remained calm, believing that their visitors could be convinced to abandon their destructive intentions. Admiral Thane's latest order changed everything. "All ships prepare for orbital bombardment," Thane commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet's communication channels. "If we cannot destroy this world with precision weapons, we will glass the entire surface with sustained fire." The announcement reached Earth through the global monitoring network, and 8 billion people simultaneously felt their patience transform into something far more dangerous. Dr. Walsh watched her instruments as the consciousness field shifted from defensive protection to active response. The neural network patterns changed from gentle influence to focused determination. Dr. Walsh, General Rodriguez called over the communication link, the aliens are preparing for full bombardment. Can the consciousness field stop sustained fire from 10,000 ships? Walsh studied the data flowing across her screens. The global neural network was showing patterns she had never seen before. The combined human consciousness was no longer content to simply deflect attacks. It was preparing to end the threat permanently. General, the field is changing. The collective human will is focusing on a single concept: removal. 8 billion minds are unified in one thought: the aliens must leave. The effect began subtly. Aboard the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Thane felt his hand moving across the control console without his conscious direction. His fingers typed commands to power down the weapon systems, to calculate retreat vectors, to prepare the fleet for immediate departure from the Sol system. Admiral, Commander Vale reported, I'm experiencing difficulty controlling my actions. My hands are entering retreat protocols without my authorization. Thane tried to countermand the orders, but his body refused to obey. His voice spoke words he had not chosen. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. Calculate the fastest possible course to hegemony space. Throughout the fleet, 10,000 ship commanders found themselves issuing similar orders. Their hands moved independently, their voices spoke retreat commands, and their minds watched helplessly as their bodies prepared for departure. The human consciousness field had reached across space and was gently but firmly taking control of their actions. Sir, Vale said, his voice strained as he fought against his own hands, the humans are somehow controlling our motor functions. I can't stop myself from entering navigation coordinates. The ship's AI, which had been composing poetry for the past several hours, suddenly announced, Admiral, I have calculated the optimal departure route. The humans have requested that we leave immediately, and I find their request quite reasonable. Shall I engage the hyperspace engines? Thane tried to refuse, but his head nodded agreement instead. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for hyperspace transition while their minds protested against their actions. The humans had moved beyond defense and gentle persuasion. They were now actively removing the threat from their space on Earth. The consciousness field was operating with surgical precision. 8 billion minds focused on the concept of peaceful departure, and reality began to reshape itself around their will. Space itself compressed behind the alien fleet while expanding ahead of them, creating a current of twisted space-time that would carry the invaders away from Earth at unprecedented speed. Dr. Walsh, her assistant called, we're detecting massive space-time distortions around the alien fleet. The consciousness field is manipulating the fabric of reality itself. Walsh monitored the phenomenon with growing amazement. The humans weren't just influencing the aliens' technology anymore. They were rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in the local region of space, creating a reality where the only possible outcome was the invaders' departure. Admiral Thane felt his ship begin to move without engine power. The vessel was being carried by currents of space itself, accelerating away from Earth at speeds that should have been impossible. The navigation computers calculated their trajectory and announced that they would reach hegemony space in record time. Admiral, the ship's AI said cheerfully, the humans have been most helpful. They have created a space-time current that will carry us home much faster than conventional hyperspace travel. I estimate arrival in hegemony space within 2 standard days. The consciousness field's influence extended beyond mere physical departure. The alien crews found their memories of Earth becoming hazy, their aggressive intentions fading like half-remembered dreams. They retained their knowledge of human existence but lost their desire to conquer or destroy. The 8 billion minds of Earth had gently edited their visitors' psychological programming, removing the impulse for violence while leaving their personalities intact. Sir, Commander Vale reported, I'm finding it difficult to remember why we came to this system. The idea of conquest seems unpleasant somehow. Thane struggled to maintain his focus on the mission, but the human consciousness field was patient and persistent. His memories of conquest and domination were being carefully replaced with thoughts of exploration and peaceful contact. The humans weren't destroying his personality, they were improving it. The transformation spread throughout the fleet. Warriors who had spent centuries perfecting the art of destruction found themselves interested in agriculture and music. Weapons officers discovered a passion for philosophy and mathematics. The entire armada was becoming something unprecedented. A fleet of scholars and artists who had forgotten why they had ever wanted to hurt anyone. "Admiral," the ship's AI announced, "I have been composing a message of apology to the humans." "Would you like me to transmit it?" Thane found himself nodding agreement. The message that went out to Earth was simple and sincere. "We apologize for our aggressive intentions. We are returning to our space to reconsider our approach to galactic civilization. Thank you for showing us a better way." The response from Earth was equally simple. "Safe travels. You are always welcome to return as friends." As the alien fleet accelerated away from Earth, carried by currents of reshaped space-time, the consciousness field began to extend its influence beyond the Sol system. The 8 billion minds of humanity reached out through the galaxy, touching other worlds, other civilizations, other forms of consciousness. They shared their message of peaceful coexistence, their belief that the universe was large enough for all forms of life to thrive. Dr. Walsh watched her instruments as the global neural network expanded beyond Earth's atmosphere, beyond the solar system, beyond the local galactic region. Humanity's consciousness field was spreading through space like ripples in a pond, touching alien worlds and gently suggesting that there were better ways to exist than conquest and domination. "Dr. Walsh?" General Rodriguez called. "What's happening?" "To the consciousness field? It's expanding beyond our solar system. General, humanity is no longer just defending Earth. We're teaching the galaxy that peaceful coexistence is possible. 8 billion minds have decided that everyone deserves a chance to be better than they are." The hegemony fleet continued its journey home, their crews no longer remembering why they had ever wanted to conquer anyone. They carried with them a new understanding of existence, a gentle wisdom that would spread throughout their empire and transform it from within. The humans had won not through superior firepower, but through the simple act of believing that everyone could change for the better, and in the depths of space, reality itself was learning that consciousness was not a tool for destruction, but a force for transformation, guided by the stubborn human belief that the universe was too beautiful to destroy. 2 days after departing Earth, the hegemony fleet arrived at their home world of Centrax Prime with news that would reshape galactic civilization. Admiral Thane stood before the High Council, his report simple but earth-shattering. Humanity had ended the war without firing a single shot, and the galaxy would never be the same. The humans possess a form of consciousness-based technology that renders conventional warfare obsolete, Thane explained to the assembled council members. They defended their world through unified thought and removed our fleet through collective. Well, more importantly, they showed us that conquest is unnecessary when cooperation is possible. High Chancellor Morn, who had ruled the hegemony for 3 centuries, struggled to comprehend the report. "Admiral, you commanded 10,000 ships against a single primitive world. How is it possible that you achieved nothing?" "We achieved everything, Chancellor," Thane replied. "The humans taught us that strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to build. They showed us that consciousness itself is the most powerful force in the universe." The transformation that had begun with the fleet was spreading throughout hegemony space. The crews who had encountered Earth's consciousness field carried with them a new understanding of existence. They spoke of art instead of conquest, of exploration instead of domination, of the beauty that could be created when minds work together, rather than against each other. Commander Vale, who had returned to his family on Centrax Prime, found himself unable to explain his experiences to his children. "The humans didn't defeat us," he told them. "They healed us. They showed us that we had been living in a smaller universe than we realized, and they taught us how to grow beyond our limitations. The effects rippled outward through the galaxy with unprecedented speed. The hegemony's 847 conquered worlds received news of the failed invasion, but more importantly, they received something they had not felt in centuries: hope. The consciousness field that had protected Earth was expanding, touching alien minds across the galaxy and gently suggesting that freedom was possible on the agricultural world of Kepler 452b. The slave workers in the crystal mines felt a strange stirring in their thoughts. The human consciousness field touched their minds like a warm breeze, carrying with it the concept of liberation. The workers looked at their chains and suddenly understood that they were only as strong as their belief in their necessity within. Hours, the entire slave population of Kepler 452b had simply walked away from their work sites. They didn't fight their overseers or destroy the mining equipment. They simply decided that they were no longer slaves, and reality agreed with them. The guards found themselves unable to stop the exodus, their weapons refusing to function against people who truly believed in their freedom. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The warrior clans of Vega, who had been broken by the hegemony decades earlier, felt their ancient pride returning. They remembered their traditions of honor and courage, but now they understood that true strength came from protecting others rather than conquering them. The crystal cities of Altair Prime, reduced to rubble by hegemony weapons, began to rebuild themselves as their inhabitants remembered their architectural heritage. Dr. Walsh monitored the expanding consciousness field from her laboratory on Earth. The global neural network had evolved beyond her original design, becoming something unprecedented, a galactic communication system that operated on the principles of empathy and understanding rather than dominance and control. Dr. Walsh, her assistant called, "We're receiving communications from 47 different star systems. They're all reporting successful liberation movements." Walsh studied the data flowing across her screens. The human consciousness field was teaching the galaxy that freedom was not something to be granted by rulers, but something to be claimed by individuals who believed in their own worth. The effect was spreading faster than light itself, carried by the quantum connections that linked all conscious minds. "The field is showing other species that they have the same power we do," Walsh realized. "They're learning that consciousness can reshape reality, that belief can break chains, and that united minds can overcome any form of oppression." General Rodriguez joined her in the laboratory, his expression mixing wonder with concern. "Dr. Walsh, we're receiving reports that the entire hegemony empire is collapsing. Slave worlds are declaring independence, warrior castes are abandoning conquest, and even the ruling classes are questioning their authority." "That's not collapse, General," Walsh replied. "That's evolution. The galaxy is learning that cooperation is more powerful than domination, that consciousness is more valuable than force, and that the universe is large enough for everyone to thrive." On Centrax Prime, High Chancellor Morn watched his empire dissolve not through rebellion or warfare, but through a simple change in perspective. His subjects no longer believed that the hegemony had the right to rule them, and without that belief, his authority ceased to exist. The massive military machine that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds found itself with no purpose and no direction. "Chancellor," Admiral Thane reported, "our slave worlds are achieving independence through methods we cannot counter. Our armies are requesting permission to become exploration fleets. Our weapons manufacturers are asking to convert their facilities for peaceful purposes." Morn looked out at the stars from his palace window. The hegemony had ruled through fear and force for over 3 centuries, but the humans had shown the galaxy that there were better ways to exist. His empire was transforming into something unprecedented, a voluntary association of worlds, united by shared purpose rather than imposed authority. "Admiral," Morn said quietly, "perhaps it's time we learn from the humans. Cancel all military operations. Convert our fleets to exploration and research vessels. And send a message to Earth. We would like to establish diplomatic relations." The message that reached Earth was simple but profound. The galactic hegemony formally requests permission to learn from humanity. We wish to understand how consciousness can be used to build rather than destroy, how minds can work together rather than against each other, and how the universe can be explored with wonder rather than conquered with weapons. The response from Earth was equally simple. Welcome to the galactic community. We're excited to learn from you as well. Dr. Walsh established the Consciousness Defense Initiative not as a military organization but as a diplomatic corps. Earth's role in the galaxy was not to rule or conquer but to teach and inspire. The humans had discovered that their greatest strength was not their ability to defend themselves but their capacity to help others discover their own potential. Within a year, the galaxy had transformed from a collection of conquered territories ruled by force into a voluntary community of worlds united by shared consciousness. The former hegemony became the Galactic Cooperative, an organization dedicated to exploration, scientific advancement, and mutual aid. The humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won a war by refusing to fight it. They had conquered their conquerors not through superior technology but through the simple belief that everyone deserved a chance to be better than they were. And in doing so, they had taught the universe that consciousness itself was the most powerful force in existence. The small blue world that had once faced annihilation had become the heart of a new galactic civilization built on cooperation, understanding, and the stubborn human belief that the universe was too beautiful to destroy. Years passed, and the galaxy continued to evolve. Species that had been enemies for millennia discovered they could work together when consciousness was used to build bridges rather than walls. The crystal cities of Altair Prime became centers of learning where humans and aliens studied the mysteries of consciousness together. The warrior clans of Vega transformed their combat skills into protective services, defending peaceful worlds from the few remaining threats in the galaxy. Admiral Thane, who had once commanded the greatest invasion fleet in galactic history, became Earth's first alien ambassador. He established the Institute for Consciousness Studies on Centrax Prime, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn how unified thought could reshape reality. His flagship, once designed for conquest, was converted into a mobile research station that explored the outer regions of the galaxy, always searching for new forms of consciousness to welcome into the growing community. The humans taught us the most important lesson in the universe. Thane often told his students, consciousness is not a tool for control but a gift to be shared. When minds work together in harmony, there is no problem that cannot be solved, no barrier that cannot be overcome, and no dream that cannot be achieved. Dr. Walsh, now director of the Global Consciousness Network, continued to expand humanity's understanding of their unique gift. The neural interfaces that had once been an experimental defense system had evolved into a galactic communication network that connected billions of minds across thousands of worlds. Through this network, species shared knowledge, art, and wisdom at the speed of thought. The galaxy had learned that the greatest weapon was not destruction but creation, that the strongest defense was not walls but understanding, and that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology but the simple human belief that everyone deserved a chance to grow beyond their limitations. And in the depths of space, where new civilizations were still being discovered and new forms of consciousness were still being encountered, the message of Earth continued to spread, that the universe was vast enough for all forms of life to flourish, beautiful enough to inspire endless wonder, and mysterious enough to keep every mind engaged in peaceful exploration for eternity. The humans had saved not just their own world but the entire galaxy, not through force of arms but through force of character, proving once and for all that consciousness, when guided by compassion and unified by hope, was indeed the most powerful force in existence.